In this interview, we will be meeting up with Amanda and Stephane Oystander, who are two teachers from Ontario, Canada, who embarked on homeschooling their kids. They are also the founders of Raising A to Z. Let's welcome Amanda and Stephane. Thank you so much for joining me. So I wanted to start by asking you, you are both teachers, right? And you decided to homeschool. I wanted to know why you wanted to start homeschooling your kids. Like what made you start that?
The flexibility was a big one for us because we could have the life that we wanted and the lifestyle that we wanted. And we liked the idea of being able to teach them what they were interested in when they were interested in it. That was two of the big ones. And then
Yeah, I think the thing with being in school is the curriculum determines what the kids learn. And I know, like for example, Lexi was really interested in learning about space when she was really young, and that's not in the curriculum until grade 6, I think, right?
yeah, grade 5 or 6, yeah.
And
So
did you guys plan this before you had the kids? Like you had this in mind, or does it come after you saw your kid?
We talked
it was
about it.
very early. They
Yeah.
were babies. Lexi was a baby when we started talking about
Yeah.
homeschooling
I think
officially. But even then,
before,
we were both like kind of on the fence of wanting to do it before
Hmm.
they were even born. So
And the
and then they came,
decision, go ahead, sorry.
then they came and we were like, yeah, that's definitely what we're gonna do. So
Good. Awesome. And how about, do you think anyone who's thinking of homeschooling right now, should they be teachers? Does that make it easy? Or, if they're not teachers, does it make it hard? What do you
no,
think?
I think that's our whole message is, we're teachers, but take it from us. You don't have to be a teacher to do this. And a big thing about being a teacher is learning about classroom management and dealing with a class of 25 to 30 kids. But when you're homeschooling, you're the parent, your kids so well, better than any teacher ever will, and you don't ever have to deal with 25 or 30 kids in your homeschool.
yeah,
Mhm.
and you know your kids' needs, if they slept well, if they ate well. You can go by what's their natural schedule, and that makes life teaching your kids so much easier than if you were in a classroom. Like we said, 90% of a teacher's day is just dealing with the classroom setup and getting kids from point A to point B. When you're at home with your kids, it's totally different.
Yeah, the management is less, for sure.
Yes, significantly
So you get more done,
more
right?
done, much quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. What advice would you give parents who are, on the fence? They're thinking about it after COVID, right? They've experienced some, at home learning, and they're on the fence. Like, should I still continue, or should I send them back to school? What would you advise them? Like, what made it happen for you? I know you said about your daughter being interested, right? What else made it happen for you? Like, you were like, for sure, I want to homeschool.
I think first off, I would say that pandemic schooling and homeschooling are very different
Okay.
because if you have been doing COVID schooling, it's very different that you're still being told what to teach, when to teach it, how it's going to be delivered. When you're homeschooling, there's so much more freedom
Yeah.
and flexibility on like what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So that's like the first thing to think of if you're coming out of this whole pandemic situation, that it's totally different. And then if you're on the fence, I always say like if you think you want to try it.
Yeah.
The schools have to take them back anyway afterwards. So if it doesn't work out after 6 months or a year, they'll still take them back, and the teachers will get them back up to grade if they weren't or whatever. But if you want to try it, like now is the perfect time to try it since there's so many options and freedom and opportunities
You have to
right
see
now.
if it works with your family, right?
Yeah, yeah, so try it.
And online makes it even possible, right? Everything is kind of on your fingertip,
Yeah.
now compared to, past, right? I noticed that you talk about deschooling. What is that, and why is that so important if I'm going to start homeschooling? What is
So
deschooling?
deschooling is a transition time that parents and kids need to take when they're leaving. Okay, sorry, we lost the kids in the driveway for a second. Deschooling is a thing that parents and kids need to take if they're leaving the public or private school system. Essentially, it's a transition period where you get to forget about academics for a while and learn to be a family again. Learn how you're going to relate with each other, learn what your natural daily rhythms are, learn how you're going to function in your everyday, but then also it's a time to unlearn all the things that you learned in the public school system. So unlearning, the stress of trying to get your work done and the stress behind testing, unlearning
The schedules,
the
the bell,
schedules and
learning is turned off and turned on by the bell system, and you don't need to do that in the homeschool.
yeah, it's unlearning and learning at the same time. And it's, if you don't deschool, which some people don't, it makes homeschooling so much harder because you're still dealing with the fight of this is now school time.
And they have those notions that
Yeah,
that
the
preconceived
ideas.
notions that don't go away, right? They kind of try to keep the structure
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
And it's also nice to give everyone kind of a chance to get over the novelty of not going to school anymore. So, like, when you're deschooling, you'll say, like, a lot of kids will all of a sudden spend like hours and hours on video games or watching shows or whatever. But eventually they get kind of bored of that and they want to move on to other things.
Yeah.
So it gives them this like chance where they're not going to get in trouble if they want to spend 3 days watching movies. It gives
Just get
them,
it out of their system, right?
yeah, it gives them a chance to get out of their system. So
Awesome. And do you think there's a time frame? Like, is there a time frame, or do you just follow your family's kind of rhythm at that
the
point?
rule of thumb is about either between 1 week and 1 month per grade. So if you have a grade 5 student, they would do anywhere from 5 weeks to 5 months. And that would be totally determined on how and why you left the school system. So if you're leaving it post COVID and it's just because you're like now getting this chance to try it, that would be maybe a shorter deschooling time. But if you were leaving the school system for like a more traumatic reason, like severe bullying or issues like that, then you might need to take the longer time to kind of take that healing time to adjust to being at home and learning and as a safe thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And how do you guys structure your day with your daughters? I know they're young still, but do you like, are you like, you got like, at 8 a.m. we're doing this? Is it like the school? Like, is that like
No.
that?
We have meal times kind of set.
1 second. You want to come in?
Sorry.
She wants.
Oh.
Okay. Hello. I don't know if she-
We can't see her really, but hi.
There we go.
Hi.
Okay. You gonna go play for a minute? Yeah. No, we're not gonna show everyone your Paw Patrols right now. All right. Let's go.
Okay, we're having our meeting with her, and then
We're almost done the questions. Don't worry, guys. We'll get to it. So how we structure our day, we structure around meal times. So those are kind of set: breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
A couple snacks throughout the day, and then bedtime.
Yeah.
We have kind of our things that we do on a regular basis. Like, so when it's not COVID, we go to like a play group or we go to gymnastics class on certain days. But other than that, we're quite flexible about what we do and when we do it.
and that's one of the big things that we really like about
Yeah.
homeschooling is that flexibility.
Yeah.
We're not stuck to certain things happening at certain times. So
And that's
Which
what deschooling does too, right? Like that's what you want to do during that deschooling is get out of that being on a schedule, because that's what school has done for all of us. Like,
Yeah.
be like this, on the bell, do this, do that, right? So kind
Yeah.
of getting out of that. So you don't recommend recreating school at home. Is that true?
some people like to do that, though. That is a style of homeschooling, to have school at home. But it depends how you look at what school at home means. Like if it's the schedule and all that, you don't need that, because part of the schedule for school is having to you know work with so many students. There's 25 to 30 kids in a class. It takes a lot longer. Kids are at school from 9 until 3. And when you're homeschooling, learning can happen anywhere, anytime. It doesn't take as long to go through things because you're just working with, you know, one or two or three kids, and the pace is a lot different. If you're looking at school at home in terms of workbooks and that sort of thing, some kids like to work in workbooks and find that they can learn really well that way. But also the flip side, in schools are trying to kind of move away from workbooks a lot more. So even in school, they're trying to get away from that school notion. They want kids, you know, up and out of their seats as much as possible within, having a class of 25 to 30 kids, as much as possible out of their seats and learning that way.
Movement. Yes. And also, I think you can get a lot more done faster at home. Like 3 hours
That's
is enough, right?
yeah, that's the other thing is like we say like with our daughter who's in kindergarten, we can do what her cousin in kindergarten at school does in a week. We can do it in about an hour.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like the when you have only one kid or two kids or three kids, you can do so much more so quickly that it kind of becomes like you don't need to spend an hour every day on math and an hour every day on language because it's just you can do it so much quicker
Yeah.
because it's focused just on when they get it, you move on. You don't need to like drill it in for the next 5 days till the rest of the class catches up, which is a big thing.
Yeah, that's true. And how do you know what curriculum to choose? Like, there's so many, and how do you do that?
Curriculum is such a personal thing. There's so many options out there, which is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, we always tell people to look for their first, if you're getting into homeschooling, try to pick a homeschooling style that can help you kind of narrow what kind of curriculum you're looking for. So if you decide you're going to be more Charlotte Mason, then look at Charlotte Mason based curriculums, um, that kind of thing. But after that, it's kind of a trial and error thing. There's so many options at so many different price points.
Yeah, you have to
Um,
look at your budget too.
yeah, but we pick books that we think our kids would do well with. We think that we pick things that we think would be interesting for them,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how we pick curriculum. Some people love all in one.
Mhm.
You're doing a meeting.
Some people love like an all in one system. Some people like just having a math and language curriculum and unschooling the rest. So it's very difficult to pick a curriculum. It can be a little overwhelming, but again, it's a very personal choice. So what works for me might not work for the family down the street. And I think that's kind of the hard thing. So a lot of it is kind of trial and error, unfortunately.
And finding what works for your family, I think is important, right? Like that you said your daughter likes this or that, then you're kind of thinking what will work for her, work for me, kind of a balance, right? You have to find a balance, I think, with choosing. It's not
Yeah.
about the curriculum, it's about balance first. Would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
And
Balance and what
go ahead.
no balance and what works for your family is the big one.
um I just thought, sorry. Let me come back. How do you make sure that your kids are getting social interactions when you're homeschooling? That's one of the biggest fear every parent has.
It's the biggest fear, and it's the one question that every homeschooler wishes would stop being asked. It's almost irritating because people think that we just lock our kids in our house and we never leave.
A big part of it comes from the name homeschool. It's
Yeah,
it's a misnomer because people think that, oh, so there's home and there's school, and normal kids are at home and then go to school every day. So if homeschool, they're at home and then they also have school at home, then they're at home all the time, which is not true.
where we are rarely home for an entire day during the week. We usually leave the house for at least a couple hours, what, 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Um, and then like there's so many different things they do gymnastics classes, we go to play groups, we go to parks and library times and all those kinds of things. But I think it's also the thing that people need to remember too is like socialization doesn't mean sitting with kids your kids age in a room and just like expecting them to like learn how to live. Socialization is about taking kids into society
Being out in
and
society.
teaching them how to function in your community and your culture and your neighborhood. So really, the idea of socialization by putting kids in schools is actually like the opposite of what socialization actually means. Like,
Yeah.
so our kids are very socialized. We
Yeah,
promise you, most homeschool kids are very, very
they're
socialized.
playing with friends and cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and they're interacting with people at the grocery store, at the library, and all sorts of different places.
the point you just made about the multi-age is so valuable, right, for kids, because like a lot of kids graduate and stuff, they have hard time speaking to adults, like they haven't had that interaction in the outer world. They come out and they're shy, or they're introvert because of that, right? So
Yeah.
that's what homeschooling illuminates more, if anything. But
It's up to the family, right? Some homeschoolers, they are at home often, or more often than not, and do become kind of, you know, hey, so, sorry. It's up to the family. You know, some families do stay home
A lot
a
more.
lot more, and that's a choice. And so it's kind of, you know, family by family, and it's not.
But you have, when you're homeschooling, you have the option of going out more. You have the option of interacting
Yeah.
with people of different age levels more often. I think that's the benefit to us of
Yeah.
the social
is
interaction.
there a huge cost involved in homeschooling in terms of in
Not so
Like,
we always say you can homeschool at any budget. You need to have a budget. I know there's a lot of people who want to do it for free. I think that's really unrealistic because you don't even send your kids to school for free. Like you still pay for their backpacks and their pencil crayons, and so there's still a cost to sending your kids to school in public school. You have a similar cost when you're homeschooling. Um, you can do it for very cheap. There's a lot of great free curriculum out there. There's lots of free resources. There's ways to save money, but there's also ways that you can spend, thousands of dollars every year on it as well. So um, there are, like I said, there's definitely cost saving things. Like we don't use a lot of manipulatives. We use stuff that we have around the house. Save a little bit of money. We take memberships at different places that we know we're going to go to often. Um, we try to pick curriculum that is lower cost for us. So it's, like we said, it's very you can do it at any budget, but I think you do need to be realistic about what your budget is going to
okay. And do you ever think about like how would your kids go back into, like, let's say they want to, it's far away for you guys, they're still young, but they want to go into post-secondary, like how do you make sure with homeschooling that they're ready to go into a post-secondary institution if they choose to?
There's a lot of different pathways now for post secondary. So some kids will take high school classes online to get their kind of credits that they need to get into post secondary. Some will just wait a year and go in as mature students when they're 19 or 20 or whatever. Some schools, and a lot of schools are now accepting like homeschool portfolios and proof of work. So the pathways to going to post secondary have changed dramatically over the last couple of years, and some schools are actually starting to take preference to homeschoolers because homeschooling is such a, they learn to learn differently.
Yeah.
And they tend to dive in deeper, and they're more independent learners. They don't need to be handheld as much. So they tend to do a little bit better once they go into a post secondary program. So like I said, everything is changing. But if the kids wanted to go to high school or something eventually, we have some high school options nearby that we've already kind of looked into, and maybe they'll do that, and maybe they won't. We'll see.
Yeah. So in your opinion, as teachers, right, why would you say homeschooling is better than the traditional school? What?
The freedom.
Yeah.
The freedom of picking what curriculum works for your kids, the freedom of picking what time of day you're going to do your learning, of when you're going to learn, how you're going to learn. My kids can take a day off in the middle of the week to go spend time with grandparents, or we can take a week off and go on holidays whenever we want. Like we have so much freedom in how we live our life and how our kids learn and live their lives that it's kind of just the best thing ever.
Yeah. It's not for everybody, and
No.
not every family is able to do it. And you know, so you have to look at that. You have to see if that's something that you're able to make happen. But if you can, the flexibility is great.
Yeah.
And it's not the end if you do choose, and eventually if you figure it's not working, you can always go back, as you said earlier, right? I mean,
You
Yeah,
can
just
and
get a
always
they're
shot.
take it back.
yeah, and they're great schools. I teach at a great school,
Yeah.
an art school, and you know, we do lots of great things there, and you know, have lots of fun with my students and my classes. But it's great to be able to work with our kids and have that flexibility of we can learn anything, anywhere, anytime, and there's no structure to the day in terms of learning can only happen from this time to this time.
We can dive in deep when they're really interested and take off on rabbit trails and learn about things for an hour if they're into it.
And if we start looking at something and they're not into it, we just let it go.
Turn it off and try another day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, Amanda and Stephane. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We'll see you later. Say thank you to your daughters for thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye. Can I see one of your toy? Can I see one of your toy on the floor? Who is that on the floor? Oh, there's flowers. Nice. Nice.
Oh, you wanted to show her Rebel?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, what's his name?
This is Paw Patrol Rebel.
Oh. And that is?
That's Puppy.
Puppy. Nice, nice. I don't know the newest toys because my son is 13. I used to know all the Thomas the Train and everything, right? When he was young.
Yeah, no, Paw Patrol is our life.
Saving.
Lots of Paw Patrol.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great summer.